I was stirring the soup when my daughter-in-law snatched the pot right out of my hands. "Who cooks like this? You are good for nothing," Jessica screamed with that voice I had learned to fear more than the silence. My son David was 10 feet away, sunk into that sofa I bought when he still called me Mommy. He turned up the volume on the TV. He pretended not to hear, just like always. The boiling broth splashed onto my hand, but I did not scream. I did not scream anymore. I had gotten used to the pain of the small burns, the kind that leave no mark on the skin, but rot you from the inside. Jessica kept ranting about my seasoning, about my uselessness, about how I was a burden in her house. That word, her house. It pierced me like all the times before. This was my house. The house that Henry and I built brick by brick during 32 years of marriage. But I said nothing. I walked toward the cupboard with slow steps. My knees creaked. I am 68 years old, and my body charges me for every humiliation with a different pain. I opened the door of the high cabinet, the one where I kept the white porcelain china with gold rims that had belonged to my mother-in-law, Margaret. $5,000 valued by an antique dealer, the most precious inheritance of the Miller family. I took out the entire stack of plates. Jessica stopped screaming. "What are you doing, you crazy old woman?" I did not answer. I just held that tower of porcelain with my trembling hands, those wrinkled hands she despised so much, and I let it fall. The crash was beautiful, as if 50 years of silence had broken all at once. The plates exploded against the ceramic floor into 1,000 shining pieces. Jessica shrieked. David came running from the living room, eyes wide, mouth open. He froze in the doorway. Amidst the fragments of porcelain that now covered my kitchen like dirty snow, I looked him straight in the eyes. Those eyes that once looked at me with a son's love, and I said with a calmness I did not even recognize in myself, "If nothing I do works, then nothing matters anymore, right?" The silence that followed was more terrifying than any scream, because my son, for the first time in 3 years, was afraid of me, and that was just the beginning of what was to come. If you want to know how a woman of almost 70 took back everything they stole from her, subscribe and follow this story to the end, because what I did next nobody saw coming. But to understand that moment, to understand why I dropped $5,000 to the floor without blinking, I need to tell you how I got there, how I went from being Martha Miller, owner of my life and my home, to becoming a stranger in my own house. And believe me, what I discovered along the way was worse than any broken plate. It all started 3 years ago on a Tuesday in October that smelled of autumn leaves and fresh coffee. Henry had died 6 months earlier, a massive heart attack while pruning the rose bushes in the garden. He fell among the flowers he loved so much, and I found him with soil under his fingernails and an almost peaceful expression on his face. The man of my life left without saying goodbye, and left me alone in this 3-bedroom house in the suburbs with $150,000 in savings and a hole in my chest that no money could fill. David came to the funeral. He cried. He hugged me. He promised he would never leave me alone. For 2 months he kept his word. He called every week. He asked how I was, if I needed anything. I clung to those calls like a castaway to a piece of wood. He was my only son, the baby that almost killed me at birth, the boy Henry carried on his shoulders, the rebellious teenager who at 20 cried and asked for forgiveness for giving us so many headaches. Then she appeared, Jessica. They arrived together on a Saturday afternoon without warning. David was wearing a wrinkled shirt and had dark circles hanging under his eyes like curtains. She wore a tight mustard-colored sweater and jeans that looked painted on. Perfect smile, impeccable nails, calculating eyes. "Mom, this is Jessica, my girlfriend." She extended her hand with that smile I would later learn to hate. "A pleasure, Mrs. Miller. David has told me so much about you." I made coffee. I took out the pastries I had bought that morning at the corner bakery. We sat in the living room, my living room with the beige denim furniture Henry and I chose together 15 years ago. And David started talking. The business had gone bankrupt. "What business?" I asked. "One with auto parts," he explained. He had invested all his savings with a partner, a guy named Jerry. Now he was in debt. $40,000 in the hole. The bank was pressuring him. He needed a place to stay while he got back on his feet. "Just a few months, Mom, I swear. Just until I get a job and can pay." Jessica put her hand over David's. Her eyes shone, but not with tears, but with something I could not identify then. "I will also look for a job, Mrs. Miller. We do not want to be a burden. We just need a breather." I looked at both of them. My son looked destroyed, defeated. And I, stupid me, could only see the 7-year-old boy who came running to hug me when he came home from school. "Stay," I said. "This is your house." Jessica smiled. David hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. I did not know I had just signed my sentence. They moved in a week later, suit after suit, box after box. They took the master bedroom, my bedroom, the one I shared with Henry for 32 years, because it was bigger and David needed space to work on his computer. I moved to the guest room. It faced the backyard and filled with dampness every rainy season. "It is temporary," Mom David said while arranging his clothes in the closet where his father's shirts still hung. 6 months later, they got married. An express wedding at the courthouse without telling me until 2 days before. "We just want something intimate," Mrs. Miller explained Jessica with that sweet voice she used when she needed something. "Just us, you know, without complications." I went. I brought flowers. I cried in silence while watching them sign. And they never left. Every time I asked when they would look for their own place, David changed the subject. Jessica sighed deeply and commented on how difficult the economy was, how expensive rents were, how much she appreciated my generosity. Generosity, that word she used like a whip disguised as a caress. Little by little, the house ceased to be mine. Jessica changed the living room curtains, the ivory linen ones I sewed myself, for modern metallic gray ones. Yours were already very old, mother-in-law. They needed a renovation. She moved the furniture. She took down the photographs of Henry and me from the wall and replaced them with abstract paintings she bought at a market. "We have to modernize this, don't you think? It looks like we live in the 90s. I stayed silent. I swallowed my pride. I told myself they were just material things, that the important thing was having my son close. But it was not just that. Jessica started imposing rules, schedules for my showers. You use too much hot water and electricity is expensive. Restrictions in the kitchen. "Better I cook, Mrs. Miller. You are too old for so much effort." Prohibitions on using the living room when they had visitors. "It is just that, well, you smell a bit old. Do not take it the wrong way." And David? David looked the other way. He buried himself in his phone. He went to the store just when I started to complain. "Do not complicate things, Mom," he told me when I managed to catch him alone. "Jessica just wants order in her house. Her house." Those 2 words knocked the wind out of me the first time I heard them come out of my son's mouth. 3 years passed like that. 3 years of becoming invisible in my own home. 3 years of washing their clothes by hand because the washing machine uses too much electricity. 3 years of eating alone in the kitchen while they had dinner in the living room watching Netflix. 3 years of listening to Jessica criticize everything I did, from how I swept to how I breathed. And I endured, because he was my son, because I was afraid of being completely alone, because at 68 the world outside was scarier than the hell inside. Until I found the papers, and I discovered that what I thought was hell was barely the lobby. The small humiliations are the ones that hurt the most, not the big ones. You see those coming, you prepare, you defend yourself. It is the little ones, the ones that arrive disguised as concern or help, the ones that eat you up inside, until one day you look in the mirror and do not recognize the woman looking back. Jessica was an expert at those. It all started with the alarm clock. Every morning at 6 sharp, she knocked on my door with her knuckles. 3 dry, authoritative knocks. "Mrs. Miller, it is time. Breakfast does not make itself." At first, I thought it was a thing of a couple of days, but it became routine ritual obligation. I got up with an aching body. The arthritis in my knees attacked me worse in the mornings and dragged me to the kitchen while they kept sleeping in my bed under my sheets in my bedroom. I made eggs with ham bacon toast, coffee with cinnamon, everything just how David liked it since he was a boy. But nothing was enough anymore. "The eggs are runny," Jessica would say, pushing the plate away with contempt. "Do you not even know how to crack an egg, Mrs. Miller?" "The coffee is cold," she complained without looking up from her phone. "You let it sit too long again." David ate in silence, eyes glued to his plate, as if he heard nothing, as if I did not exist. Then came the laundry. "Mrs. Miller, the washer uses too much electricity," Jessica announced one afternoon, hands on hips planted in the patio doorway. "Besides, you do not pay a dime for utilities. The least you can do is wash by hand." So there I was with my 68 years and hands that no longer gripped with strength, kneeling in front of a plastic tub, scrubbing her silk blouses, her designer jeans, my son's underwear. It broke my soul to touch it because it reminded me of when he was a baby and I changed his diapers with all the love in the world. My knuckles cracked, my skin peeled. But I could not complain because it was the least I could do after so much generosity. That cursed word again, generosity. Then came the schedule restrictions. "You cannot shower after 7 at night," Jessica ordered. "The water heater consumes too much gas and we pay for it. You cannot watch television in the living room when we have guests," she added another day. "It is just that, well, you smell a bit funny. It is not personal, Mrs. Miller. It is just that at your age you know." The body changes. She humiliated me in front of her friends, in front of her parents. Once during a dinner, she organized without telling me she locked me in my room from the outside. "She is very tired," I heard her tell the guests. "Better that she rests." I spent 3 hours in there listening to laughter and music on the other side of the door, knocking without anyone coming to open until the party ended, and Jessica remembered she had locked me in. "Oh, sorry, mother-in-law. I completely forgot." And David, my son, the boy I birthed with 22 hours of labor, nothing. Absolute silence. One afternoon I confronted him. I waited for him in the hallway when he came out of the shower, still with wet hair smelling of that expensive shampoo he bought with my money. "David, I need to talk to you." "Not now, Mom. I am in a hurry. It is important." He sighed. That sigh I knew so well, the one he used as a teenager when I asked him to clean his room. "What is it now, your wife Jessica?" "She treats me badly, son. She humiliates me. She makes me feel like I am in the way in my own house." He rubbed his face with his hands. He avoided my gaze. "Mom, you are old. Do not complicate things. Jessica just wants order in her house. If you do not like it well, you can look for another place." I felt the floor open beneath my feet. Her house. "David, this is my house. I paid for it with your father for 30 years. Yes, but now we pay the utilities. We keep this running. You are just here. You are just here." Those 4 words left me breathless. My son looked at me as if I were an old piece of furniture that was no longer useful, but out of pity they dared not throw away. "What did that woman do to you, David?" "Where is the son I raised?" "I grew up, Mom. That is what happened. I am not your little boy anymore. I have my own family now." He left. He left me standing in the hallway, tears rolling down my cheeks, hugging myself because there was no one else to hug me. That night I did not eat dinner. I stayed in my room staring at the damp spots on the ceiling, wondering at what moment I had lost my son. But the worst had not passed yet. Because 3 weeks later, while looking for an electricity bill that Jessica swore I had lost, I opened the desk drawer in the study, the one that had been Henry's, and found a manila folder hidden under some old files. I opened it with trembling hands, and what I saw inside made the world stop. They were legal documents, notary deeds, papers with the seal of a lawyer I did not know. And my name, Martha Miller, widow of Mr. Miller, appeared again and again next to words that froze my blood. Mental incompetency, progressive senility, inability to administer assets. They were trying to declare me insane. They were trying to take everything from me. My own blood was stealing the house for which Henry had given 30 years of his life. My hands shook so much I could barely hold the papers. There were medical reports, fake because I had never gone to that doctor, with invented diagnoses, statements signed by witnesses who supposedly had seen my mental deterioration. Everything carefully fabricated, and at the end of the file, a document that went through me like a bullet. Bank statements. From the joint account I had opened with David for emergencies, the one that held the $150,000 Henry left me. Only $50,000 remained. They had taken out $100,000, stolen. By my son and that viper who called herself my daughter-in-law. I let myself fall into the desk chair, the same one where Henry sat to do accounts on Sundays, and I sobbed until I had no tears left. How had I reached this point? How had I allowed them to destroy me like this? The answer was simple and painful, because I loved them, because they were my family, because I was afraid of being left alone. But that afternoon, among those papers that smelled of betrayal, something changed inside me. The fear began to turn into rage, and rage, as they would soon discover, can be much more dangerous than silence. I put the documents back exactly as I found them. With hands that still trembled, I folded each paper following the original creases, put them back in the manila folder, and hid it under the same old files. I closed the drawer slowly in silence, as if someone could hear me even though the house was empty. Jessica had gone shopping. David was at a job interview. Another lie in the collection they had built around me. I sat on the living room sofa, the one they no longer let me use when they were there, and I looked at the walls of my house as if seeing them for the first time. Henry's photographs had disappeared, the memories of 32 years of marriage erased as if they had never existed. In their place, soulless paintings Jessica had bought on sale, $100,000. The number spun in my head like a vulture over carrion. That was more than money. It was Henry's sweat getting up at 5 a.m. for 30 years to drive his taxi. It was the nights I spent awake sewing for others to scrape together the down payment for this house. It was every dollar saved, every luxury denied, every sacrifice made, with the promise that someday we could rest. And my son, my own blood, had stolen it from me while forcing me to wash his clothes by hand. But that was not the worst. The worst were the papers to declare me incompetent, to erase me legally, to turn me into a ghost in my own life. I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath, and in that moment I made a decision that would change everything. I would not give them the pleasure of seeing me destroyed. During the following days, I became a consummate actress. Every morning I got up at 6, made breakfast, endured Jessica's insults with my head down. I washed clothes, cleaned floors, made myself small, invisible, harmless. But inside I was planning. I needed help. I could not face this alone. And there was only one person in the world I could trust completely. Cousin Louise. 71 years of pure steel fiber wrapped in elegance. A retired lawyer from Chicago with 3 successful children and 0 tolerance for nonsense. We had grown up together, shared rag dolls and secrets of youth. She was the only real family I had left. I called her on a Tuesday afternoon when Jessica went to her yoga class, another thing she paid for with my money. And David was God knows where doing God knows what. "Cousin, what happened? You haven't called me in months." And then I broke down. I told her everything. The humiliations, the insults, the stolen money, the fake documents, every word came out between sobs I could no longer contain. 3 years of pain condensed into 20 minutes of telephone confession. There was a silence when I finished. A silence so heavy, I thought the call had cut off. "Louise, I am here." Her voice sounded different, cold, dangerous. "And are you going to allow that viper to take what Henry built with his sweat? Are you going to let your son, my nephew, rob you and erase you as if you were worth nothing? I do not know what to do." "Well, I do. Listen to me well, Martha. Those documents are worth nothing without your signature and a formal trial. Nothing. But if we do not act now, they are going to forge your signature or pressure you until you give in. Do you understand me?" I nodded, although she could not see me. "You need a lawyer. Today. Right now. I do not have money for—" "I have contacts. A colleague from university who handles these cases. I am going to call him right now. But Martha, listen to me well. You have to be strong. You have all the power here. The house is in your name. The money is yours. The problem is that you have believed the story that you are useless." Her words hit me like a necessary slap. It is time you remember who the hell you are, cousin. You are Martha Miller, the woman who raised a son alone while her husband worked 12 hours a day, the one who built a home from scratch, the one who survived the death of her life partner. You are not the useless old lady that Wretch wants you to believe you are. Something lit up inside me, a small but fierce spark. What do I have to do? First, do not touch those documents. Leave them there as evidence. Second, the lawyer is going to call you tomorrow. His name is Robert Davis. You trust him with everything. Third, you need proof of the humiliations. Do you have a way to record? I do not know how to use those things. Do you have trustworthy neighbors? I thought of Lisa, the girl from number 42, a nursing student, always kind, always asking if I needed anything when we crossed paths on the street. Yes, there is a young girl. Perfect. Ask her for help. Tell her you need to install cameras or record with your phone. Young people know about those things. We need evidence of how they treat you. Every insult, every humiliation, everything. Louise. I am afraid. I know, cousin, but do you know what is scarier? Ending your days in a nursing home while those two spend your money on vacations. Is that what you want? No. Then fight. Fight with everything you have, and you are not alone. I am coming there this weekend. We are going to sink that viper and that ungrateful son until they beg for mercy. We hung up. I sat in the living room looking at my wrinkled hands, those hands Jessica despised so much. And for the first time in 3 years, I did not see them as weak. I saw them as weapons. The next day, Robert Davis called me. Professional voice, serious tone. He explained the legal steps to protect my property and money. He told me I needed to act fast, block access to the bank account, gather evidence of fraud, document the abuse. Mrs. Miller, the law is on your side, but I need you to be brave. Can you do it? I looked toward the kitchen where Jessica was making a smoothie with organic ingredients that cost $20. Ingredients I had paid for without knowing. Yes, I answered. I can do it. That afternoon, when Jessica went to the salon, I knocked on the door of apartment 42. Lisa opened with her usual smile. Mrs. Miller, what a pleasure to see you. Come in, come in. Lisa, I need your help, and I cannot explain everything, but trust me. I told her the basics. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, her brown eyes filled with indignation. That wretch. Sorry for the language, ma'am, but that is what she is. Of course I will help you. Look, I have some small cameras I bought for my school project. They can be hidden easily, and I'm going to teach you how to record with your cell phone. We spent 2 hours practicing. How to turn on the phone's audio recorder without it being noticed. Where to place the mini cameras. In the living room clock in the kitchen, vase in the picture frame in the hallway. When she treats you badly, record everything Lisa instructed. Every word, no matter how cruel. In fact, the worse, the better. I did not have to wait long. 2 days later, while I was making dinner, Jessica stormed into the kitchen. "What is this garbage?" she screamed, pointing at the chicken stew I was cooking. "How many times do I have to tell you, David does not eat onions? Are you deaf or stupid?" My cell phone was in my apron pocket, recording. Sorry. That is the only thing you know how to say. You know what? Do not even cook anymore. You are good for nothing. You are useless. A burden. If David were not so noble, he would have kicked you out years ago. Every word was recorded with perfect clarity. At your age, you should be grateful we support you. Most old women like you end up abandoned eating scraps in some cheap nursing home. I kept my head down, hands busy peeling potatoes. But inside, I was smiling, because every insult was a bullet I would use against her later. Over the next 2 weeks, I collected evidence like a patient hunter. The cameras captured Jessica screaming at me, insulting me, treating me like trash. The audio recorded her cruel comments about my age, my smell, my uselessness. And then I found something I was not even looking for. One night, unable to sleep, I went down to the kitchen for a glass of water. It was 2 a.m. The house was silent. But passing the living room, I heard voices whispering in the master bedroom. Jessica. But she was not talking to David. She was talking on the phone. I approached the door with my heart hammering in my chest. The wood was ajar just half an inch. I took out my cell phone, activated the recorder, and held my breath. Do not be impatient, my love. "Everything is almost ready," Jessica was saying with a voice I had never heard from her. Soft, affectionate, intimate. "The lawyer says in a month, Max, we have the deeds. Yes, in my name. David suspects nothing. The idiot thinks I do it for him." She laughed. A laugh that froze my blood. "Obviously, I am going to leave him Jerry. Do you think I married that imbecile for love? Please. It was just the means to get the house. Yes, the old woman is almost neutralized. As soon as I have everything signed, I start the divorce and we take off to Puerto Vallarta like we planned. Jerry, the partner from the failed business, the partner who had stolen everything from them. There was no business. There never was. Everything, absolutely everything, had been a lie from the beginning. Jessica was not only robbing me, she was robbing David too. And my son, so stupid and blinded, was part of the plan without even knowing it. I recorded for 10 minutes. Every word, every laugh, every detail of the plan to leave me with nothing and abandon my son like a stray dog. When I went back up to my room, I was no longer trembling with fear. I was trembling with pure, crystalline rage. Now I had everything I needed, and best of all, they had no idea that the useless old lady had just become the most dangerous person in that house. The calendar marked March 15th, my 69th birthday, 1 year closer to 70, 1 year further from the Henry who used to sing the birthday song to me with his out-of-tune voice while bringing me coffee in bed. I expected nothing. I had learned to expect nothing. But Jessica had other plans. Mother-in-law, she told me that morning with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "We are going to organize a little dinner to celebrate your birthday. Something intimate, family only. What do you think?" It took me by surprise. For 3 years my birthday had gone unnoticed. Not a congratulation, not a hug, not even a text message from David. And now suddenly they wanted to celebrate. "It is not necessary," I said cautiously. "I do not want to cause trouble." "Oh, do not be like that. We insist." "Right, love?" She elbowed David, who was eating breakfast, without looking up from his phone. Yes, sure. Happy birthday, Mom." He did not even look at me when he said it. Something did not add up. My instinct, the one I had been ignoring for 3 years, screamed at me to be careful. But I nodded. I smiled. I pretended to be grateful, because now I knew how to play too. I spent the day preparing my own party. Jessica had me cleaning the house so everything looks presentable. I dusted, mopped, cleaned the bathrooms, polished the mirrors. My knees screamed in pain. My back burned. But I did not complain. My cell phone in my pocket recorded every order, every hurtful comment. "Mrs. Miller cleaned that corner well. Can you not see it is full of cobwebs? Oh God, at your age you cannot even see well. Hurry up, the guests arrive at 7 and the kitchen is still not done." At 6 in the afternoon, when I finished leaving the house shining, I went up to my room to change. I put on a maroon dress I had not worn since Henry's funeral. I put on barely any makeup, a little powder. Discreet lipstick. I combed the gray hair that Jessica always said made me look careless. I looked in the mirror. The woman who looked back seemed tired, but there was something new in her eyes. Something hard, determined. "Happy birthday, Martha," I told myself. "Let this be the last one you spend being a coward." I went down at 7 sharp. The living room was decorated. Gold balloons, which I had inflated that afternoon, and a sign that said, "Happy Birthday," hanging on the wall. The dining table was set with the embroidered linen tablecloth that had been my mother's. But when I saw who the guests were, my stomach churned. Jessica's parents, her brother with his girlfriend, 3 friends of hers I had never seen, and that guy Jerry. Yes, the supposed partner who had robbed them, sitting there as if nothing with a beer in his hand. Not a single person I knew, not my friends from church, not Cousin Louise, not the neighbors with whom I had shared 30 years of life. This was not my birthday party. It was Jessica's party. I was just the excuse. "There is the birthday girl," announced Jessica with a sing-song voice pointing at me as if I were a circus animal. Come everyone to say hello." They surrounded me with fake hugs and empty congratulations. Jessica's father, a heavy-set man who smelled of cheap cigars, patted me on the back. "Many congratulations, ma'am." 69. Wow! My mom didn't even make it to 65. What a most appropriate comment for a party. We sat down to dinner. Jessica had ordered food from an expensive restaurant. Pasta, gourmet salads, artisan bread. all paid for with the money they had stolen from my account. I sat at the end of the table, the place of least importance, while Jessica presided like a queen in my chair in my dining room in my house. David was by her side, smiling uncomfortably, pouring wine for the guests. A toast announced Jessica's father raising his glass. To Mrs. Miller, who is lucky to have such a dedicated daughter-in-law who takes care of her in her old age. Everyone laughed and toasted. I held my glass of water. They hadn't served me wine and forced a smile. "Yes, it is. Luck," continued Jessica's mother, a thin woman with too much makeup. "At her age, many women end up alone, abandoned by their families. What a blessing that David and my daughter have taken her in, as if I were homeless and they rescued me from the street. Nobody mentioned it was my house, that they were the ones I took in when they arrived with nothing." The dinner continued amidst laughter and anecdotes that did not include me. They talked about trips, restaurants, future plans. I was just another piece of furniture in the room, invisible, irrelevant. Until Jessica made the announcement. She tapped her glass with a knife to get attention. Everyone went silent. She stood up radiant with that perfect smile she had perfected. "Well, since we are all gathered, David and I want to share some exciting news." My son also stood up, taking her hand. "We are going to completely renovate the house," announced Jessica, opening her arms as if presenting a project on television. "New bathrooms, modern kitchen, wood floors, everything. We already have the budget, and we start next month." Applause. "Congratulations, how exciting, how wonderful. Nobody asked my opinion." And she continued, pointing toward the living room walls. "We are going to throw out all those antiques Mrs. Miller keeps. Old furniture, ancient photos, that porcelain china nobody uses. Everything goes. The house looks like a museum from the 70s. Laughter, murmurs of approval. I felt like I was drowning. Those antiques were my life. Every photograph was a memory of Henry. Every piece of furniture, a story. The porcelain china had belonged to 3 generations of Miller women. "Excuse me," I said with a voice barely audible. "Those things have sentimental value. You cannot—" "Oh, mother-in-law," Jessica interrupted me, turning toward me with that expression of fake patience I hated so much. "At your age, you have to learn to let go of material things. Besides, we need space. You cannot live in the past forever." Jessica's brother let out a laugh. "It is true, my grandmother was the same. She kept even torn underwear because it had sentimental value." More laughter. I sank into my chair, cheeks burning with humiliation. Then Jerry, that damn Jerry who whispered dirty things to my daughter-in-law on the phone while my son slept, raised his glass. "Well, I toast to Jessica and David, to the perfect couple who knows how to modernize an old house like me. And we must be thankful," added Jessica, looking directly at me with eyes full of poison disguised as honey, "that Mrs. Miller is so understanding. At her age, many end up in a nursing home eating mush and watching television all day. But she has the fortune of being here with us, being part of the family." Awkward silence. Some guests looked the other way. Others smiled nervously, but nobody defended me. And David, my son, my only son, stayed standing there, glass in hand, avoiding my gaze. "Well," said Jessica's father, breaking the tension. "Where is the cake?" Jessica clapped. "Ah, yes, I brought a special one. David helped me." They went out to the kitchen. The guests resumed their conversations. I remained seated in my corner with a knot in my throat so big I could barely breathe. They returned with a small cake more suitable for a child than for someone turning 69 with lit candles. They placed it in front of me. "Sing," ordered Jessica. They sang the birthday song out of tune, fast, without enthusiasm, like someone fulfilling an annoying obligation. "Make a wish, mother-in-law." I looked at the candles. I looked at the faces around me, strangers, all strangers. I looked at my son, who finally held my gaze for a second before turning away. And in that moment, something inside me broke definitely. It was not just pain, it was rage, anger, burning indignation. But I said nothing. I just closed my eyes, made a wish they would never imagine, and blew out the candles. Lukewarm applause. Jessica cut the cake. A tiny piece for me, generous ones for everyone else. We ate in silence, uncomfortable. At 10 at night, the guests started to leave. Goodbye hugs. Many congratulations, ma'am. Take care, you are in good hands. When the last one left, Jessica let herself fall onto the sofa with a dramatic sigh. How exhausting. David cleaned this up for me while I shower. My son obeyed like a trained dog, picking up dirty plates, glasses, crumpled napkins. I remained seated in my corner, looking at the remains of my birthday party that had not been mine at all. David passed by me carrying plates to the kitchen. He said nothing. Not an additional happy birthday. Not, I hope you had fun. Nothing. I went up to my room with heavy legs and an even heavier heart. I took off the maroon dress and hung it in the closet. I sat on the bed, that squeaky twin bed so different from the king size in my bedroom which they now occupied, and I took out the photograph of Henry I kept in the nightstand drawer. Forgive me. I whispered to that black and white image of my husband smiling in his taxi driver uniform. Forgive me for being so weak, for letting them trample everything we built together. Tears fell on the glass of the frame, distorting his face. But no more, my love. I swear to you, no more. I put away the photograph. I took out my cell phone. I reviewed the day's recordings, every disguised insult, every public humiliation, everything perfectly documented. Then I dialed Cousin Louise's number. She answered on the second ring. Cousin, what happened? It is almost 11. Louise, I said with a firm voice, no tears left. I need you to come tomorrow, not the weekend. Tomorrow. What happened? What happened is that I finished collecting evidence. What happened is that I already have everything I need. And what happened is that today, on my 69th birthday, they humiliated me for the last time. There was a pause. I am packing my suitcase, answered my cousin, and I am calling Robert so he has everything ready. Game over, Martha. Now comes the war. I hung up. I turned off the light. But I could not sleep. Because for the first time in 3 years, I did not feel fear of the next day. I felt anticipation. The next morning dawned gray. Heavy clouds covered the sky, threatening a storm. But I felt strangely light, as if something toxic had finally drained from my body during the night. I got up before Jessica knocked on my door. I dressed carefully. Jeans, mustard blouse, the knitted sweater Henry gave me on our last anniversary. I looked in the mirror, and for the first time in months, I recognized the woman reflected there. Martha Miller. Not the victim. Not the useless old lady. The woman who had survived poverty, difficult births, the death of her husband. The one who had fire in her veins, even if she had forgotten it for a while. I went down to the kitchen. I made coffee just for me. I took pastries from the cupboard. I sat at the table and ate breakfast in silence, watching through the window as the clouds grew darker. At 9 in the morning, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Jessica appeared in sweatpants and a t-shirt, hair in a messy ponytail, yawning. "Good morning," I said calmly. She looked at me surprised. "You already ate breakfast." "And ours, I haven't made it yet." Her eyes narrowed. "Excuse me, I said I haven't made it yet. If you want breakfast, the kitchen is right there." The silence that followed was delicious. Jessica stood frozen in the doorway, mouth slightly open, processing what she had just heard. It was probably the first time in 3 years I did not jump to obey her. "Do you feel sick, mother-in-law?" she asked with that sweet voice she used when preparing an attack. "I feel perfectly fine." "Thank you. Then I do not understand why. Because I am 69 years old and my knees hurt. Because yesterday I cleaned this entire house for your party. Because I am tired. And because honestly you have 2 perfectly functional hands." Jessica's eyes lit up with barely contained fury. She opened her mouth to respond, but at that moment the doorbell rang. Loud, insistent, as if someone was knocking with urgency. "Are you expecting someone?" asked Jessica with suspicion. "Yes." I got up from the table, calmly walked to the front door and opened it. There was Cousin Louise. 71 years of pure elegance wrapped in a sand-colored suit, short hair, perfectly styled gold-rimmed glasses, travel suitcase by her side. She looked like a lawyer even on her day off, because that was what she had always been, a woman who took nothing from anyone. "Cousin," she said, with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Louise." We hugged tight. She smelled of French perfume and determination. "Who is it?" asked Jessica from the kitchen, peering out with an unfriendly face. Louise entered, dragging her suitcase, looking my daughter-in-law up and down with an expression that could freeze lava. "I am Louise Miller, Martha's cousin attorney-at-law, and you are Jessica, David's wife, the owner of this house." "Oh, what a mistake," Louise let out a dry laugh. "The owner." "Interesting, because according to the deeds I reviewed yesterday with the notary, the only owner of this property is Martha Miller, widow of Mr. Miller. But well, maybe you have information I do not know." Jessica's face went pale, then red, then purple. I meant that. Do not worry. I know exactly what you meant." At that moment, David came down the stairs, rubbing his eyes. "What is all this noise, Mom? Who Aunt Louise, David? Long time no see, nephew." Her tone was cold as an iceberg. "The last time we saw each other was at Henry's funeral. 3 years. Not a call, not a visit." David swallowed hard. "It is just that we have been busy with stealing from your mother." "Yes, I heard." Absolute silence. Jessica took a step forward. "Excuse me, who do you think you are to come to? I am the cousin who is going to ensure you pay for every dollar you stole from Martha, and every humiliation, every insult, every day of mistreatment." Louise took her cell phone out of her purse. "Do you want me to play the recordings now, or do you prefer to keep pretending?" Jessica's eyes widened like plates. "Recordings. What are you talking about? About the 27 audio recordings where you insult my cousin, about the videos where you treat her like trash, about the phone conversation where you tell your lover, Jerry, that you are going to leave David as soon as you have the house in your name." David stumbled as if he had been punched. "What? Jerry? What is she talking about?" Jessica turned white as paper. That is a lie. This old woman is inventing—" "Do you want me to ask your husband if it is a lie?" Louise pressed a button on her phone. Jessica's voice filled the living room. "Do not be impatient, my love. Everything is almost ready. The lawyer says in a month, max, we have the deeds. Yes, in my name. David suspects nothing. The idiot thinks I do it for him. I watched my son crumble, literally. He fell onto the stairs, hands on his head, breathing raggedly. Obviously, I'm going to leave him, Jerry. Do you think I married that imbecile for love? Please." "It was just the means to get the house." "Turn it off," whispered David. "Please turn it off." Louise stopped the recording. The silence that followed was so dense it could be cut with a knife. Jessica tried to recover. "That is taken out of context. I have 12 minutes of complete audio," Louise interrupted her. "Do you want me to continue? I also have the bank statements showing the $100,000 you withdrew from Martha's account and the fake documents you prepared to declare her incompetent. Shall I continue?" Nobody spoke. I stood next to Louise, arms crossed, watching the castle of lies they had built collapse brick by brick. David looked up at Jessica. He had tears in his eyes. "Is it true? Is all this true?" Jessica opened her mouth, closed it, searched for words she did not find. "Answer me!" screamed my son, standing up. "Is it true David, if you let me explain. Answer yes!" She exploded finally. "Yes, it is true. Happy to know you were used, because that is what you are, David, a means to an end, a useful idiot who—" The slap resonated through the whole house. David had slapped Jessica. His hand trembled. I had never seen him so furious. "Get out," he said with a broken voice. "Get out of this house right now. This house is also mine." Jessica spat, cheek red. "We are married. I have rights. This house," I said, speaking for the first time since Louise arrived, "was never yours, nor will it be. And if you do not leave in the next 5 minutes, I am calling the police and pressing charges for fraud, theft, and abuse." Jessica looked at me with pure hate. "This is not going to stay like this. I am going to sue you. I am going to—" "Go ahead," said Louise with a sharp smile. "Do it. That way in court I can present all the evidence officially. The judge is going to love the videos where you insult a 69-year-old woman in her own house." Jessica trembled with rage. She looked at David, seeking support. My son turned his face away. "You are a coward," she spat at him. "Just like your mother. 2 pathetic cowards." 3 minutes, I said without flinching. Jessica stormed up the stairs. We heard her opening drawers, throwing things, cursing. 15 minutes later, she came down with 2 suitcases, hair messed up, eyes burning with fury. "This does not end here," she hissed before leaving and slamming the door. When the sound of her heels faded into the distance, David collapsed. He fell to his knees in the middle of the living room, sobbing like a child. "Mom, I did not know. I did not know anything about Jerry, about the money, the documents. I did not move. I just looked at him from above. This son who had betrayed me, who had let me be humiliated for 3 years, who had chosen silence over defending me." "You thought what, David?" I asked with a calm voice. "You thought it was okay for her to treat me like trash. You thought I deserved to sleep in the guest room while you occupied my bedroom. You thought washing your clothes by hand at my 69 years was fair. I am an idiot, a coward. You are right. I did not defend you. I saw how she humiliated you, and I did nothing. Forgive me, Mom, please." Tears ran down his face. He seemed sincere, destroyed, broken. But I had also been destroyed and broken, and nobody had helped me. "I do not know if I can forgive you, David," I said finally. "I do not know if I will ever be able to forget that when I needed you most, you abandoned me, that you chose that woman over your own mother. I know, and I hate myself for it. But give me a chance, just one chance to fix it." Louise put her hand on my shoulder. "The decision is yours, cousin." I looked at my son, 38 years old, kneeling on the floor, crying like the boy he once was, and I felt something strange in my chest. It was not forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe it was something similar to the possibility of forgiveness. Someday. Maybe. "Get up," I said, "and listen to me well. From today on, things are going to change in this house. This is my house. You are here because I allow it. And if you want to earn back even a shred of my trust, you are going to have to work very hard." "Anything," he sobbed. "Anything, Mom. First, you are going to look for a job. Today, not tomorrow. Today. Second, you are going to pay back every dollar you stole from my account. I do not know how, but you are going to do it. Third, you are going to take therapy because you have serious problems you need to fix." He nodded frantically. Yes, whatever you say." "And fourth," I added with a softer voice, "you are going to help me recover the house your father and I built. You are going to take down those horrible paintings Jessica put up. You are going to hang Henry's photographs back up. You are going to give this place its soul back. I will do it, I promise you." I do not know if I believed him. Honestly, in that moment, I did not know if I would ever believe in my son again. But at least he had taken the first step, and I had recovered my voice. The days that followed were strange, like waking up from a long nightmare and discovering the world was still turning, but everything looked different, sharper, more real. Louise stayed with me. We put her suitcase in the guest room, my room that I finally recovered, while David moved into the smallest room, the one facing the backyard. He was no longer the king of the house. He was barely a tolerated tenant. And I needed things to stay that way for a while because although Jessica had left the house, the legal battle was just beginning. "Listen well," Cousin Louise told me that night while we drank chamomile tea in the living room, my living room, with my furniture back in its place. "Jessica is going to counterattack. She is a cornered viper, and those are the most dangerous. She is going to look for lawyers. She's going to try to claim marital rights. She's going to invent stories. Can she do it? Can she take something from me?" "Legally, no. The house has been in your name since before the marriage. It is your individual asset. But that does not mean she is not going to try. That is why we need to be 3 steps ahead of her." Robert Davis, the lawyer, Cousin Louise had found for me, came the next day. A man of about 50, impeccable gray suit, worn leather briefcase that spoke of years of experience. The 4 of us sat in the dining room, Robert, Louise, David, and I, with documents scattered over the wooden table that Henry had bought at an auction 20 years ago. Mrs. Miller began Robert adjusting his glasses. "The situation is serious but manageable. First, the good news. You have solid proof of fraud, misappropriation, and abuse. The videos and audios are strong evidence. The fake documents to declare you incompetent are a felony. And the bad news," I asked, that recovering the stolen money is going to be complicated. Your son and your daughter-in-law spent those $100,000, some on renovations that added value to the house, which can be argued as an investment, others on personal expenses that will be difficult to trace. I looked at David. He was pale with deep dark circles. He had not slept well since Jessica left. "What did they spend my money on?" I asked directly. My son swallowed hard. "I do not know everything. Jessica handled the finances, but I know she remodeled the master bedroom, changed floors, bought new furniture, paid for her car. Her car, a brand new SUV model 2024. $40,000. It is in her name." The rage climbed up my throat again. Almost $500,000 on a car. With my money. "We can seize the vehicle," said Robert, taking notes. "Also press criminal charges for fraud. But Mrs. Miller, I need you to understand something. A trial like this can last years. It is draining emotionally and economically." "What do you recommend then?" Robert exchanged a look with Louise. My cousin nodded slightly. "There is another option," the lawyer continued. "Faster, more forceful. But it requires you to be willing to play a little dirty." "How dirty?" A small smile crossed his face. "Legal, but intimidating. You see Jessica Smith. That is your daughter-in-law's name, right? She has a history we investigated. 3 previous jobs where she was fired for accounting irregularities. A civil lawsuit in Chicago for scamming an elderly man. It never prospered because they reached an out-of-court settlement. But the file exists." I straightened in my chair. She had done this before. Apparently, yes. She has a pattern. She approaches men with elderly mothers who have properties. She seduces them. She marries fast. She tries to appropriate the assets, and when it does not work or she gets what she wants, she disappears. David covered his face with his hands. "My God, was I that stupid?" "Yes, you were," I said without mercy. "But now you are going to help me fix it." Robert unfolded a plan on the table. "Here is my proposal. We prepare a legal package so solid that when she sees it, Jessica understands she has no escape. Criminal lawsuit for fraud, civil lawsuit for damages, seizure of the vehicle, restraining order, and this is important threat of public exposure. Public exposure, social media, local community groups, a well-told story about how a woman took advantage of a 69-year-old lady. In this era, public shame can be more effective than any trial." Louise smiled with satisfaction. "What Robert proposes is to pressure her until she accepts a deal, that she returns what she can, that she signs papers renouncing any right over this property, and that she gets out of town forever. And if she does not accept, then we activate everything. We sink her legally and socially. But my experience tells me she will accept. Predators like her prefer to flee rather than face the consequences." I looked at the documents, the photographs of Jessica that Robert had obtained, the old files, the proof I myself had collected for weeks. "Do it," I said finally. "Prepare everything. But I want to be present when you deliver it to her." Robert nodded. "It will be done. I need a week to assemble the complete file. Meanwhile, Mrs. Miller, it is crucial that you have no contact with her. No messages, calls, or casual encounters. Total silence." During that week, I dedicated myself to reclaiming my house. With the help of David, who worked like a possessed man, perhaps trying to atone for his guilt, we removed every trace of Jessica. The abstract paintings went to the trash, the gray curtains donated, the modern cushions she had bought gifted to Lisa, my neighbor. We hung Henry's photographs back up, my husband smiling with his impeccably clean taxi, the 2 of us at the beach during our honeymoon, David as a baby in his father's arms, the family we had been. "I am sorry," Dad whispered David while hanging a photograph in the living room. "I am sorry I allowed them to erase your memory from this house." I said nothing. I just kept cleaning. We recovered my bedroom. We took out the expensive furniture Jessica had bought with my money and put back the cedarwood bed Henry built with his own hands, the antique vanity that had been my mother's, the ivory knitted quilt that took me 6 months to finish. Every object returning to its place was like recovering a piece of my soul. One afternoon, while organizing the dresser drawers, I found something that stopped me in my tracks. a dark blue velvet box hidden under some sweaters. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was jewelry. My jewelry. The ones I thought I had lost, or that Jessica had thrown away. The pearl necklace Henry gave me on our 20th anniversary. The gold earrings with small rubies that belonged to my grandmother. The engagement ring I no longer wore because arthritis swelled my fingers. Jessica had hidden them. She probably planned to sell them or keep them. I called David. "Look at this." My son turned pale seeing the jewelry. I did not know she... How many more things did you not know, David? How many times did you not want to see? He crumbled onto the bed head and hands. Every day I discover something new. Every day I realize how blind I was. How could I be such an idiot? For the first time since Jessica left, I felt some compassion for my son. He had also been a victim, manipulated, used. But that did not erase what he had done to me. "David," I said, sitting next to him, "I want you to understand something. Jessica may have deceived you. She may have manipulated you. But when she humiliated me, when she insulted me, when she treated me like trash, you were there, conscious awake, and you chose to do nothing. I know. I do not know if I can ever forgive you completely for that. Honestly, I do not know. But if you want even a chance, you have to earn it. With actions, not with words. I will do whatever is necessary, Mom, I swear. Then start by looking for a job for real, no excuses." He nodded, and to my surprise, he followed through. 3 days later, he got a job at a hardware store. It was not much a sales clerk, $2,000 a month, but it was a start. I saw him leave that first morning with an orange uniform and a lunchbox I prepared for him, and for a second, I saw the 20-year-old boy who worked at a gas station to pay for college. Perhaps not everything was lost. On Friday of that week, Robert called. "Everything is ready. Mrs. Miller, the complete file. When do you want us to deliver it to Jessica?" "Where is she now renting an apartment on the north side? She lives with Jerry, her lover. He also has a record, by the way. Petty fraud, bad checks. Of course, snakes always stay together. I want to hand her the papers in person," I said. "I want to see her face when she understands she lost." "Mrs. Miller." Robert's voice sounded cautious. "I do not know if that is a good idea. These situations can become volatile. I will go with Louise, and you. I will not be alone, but I need to do this. Do you understand?" There was a pause. "I understand. Then let's schedule the meeting for Monday. In my office. Neutral ground. I will tell her it is to negotiate the divorce. That will make her come." I hung up the phone. Louise was looking at me from the sofa with a proud smile. "Ready for the final round?" "More than ready," I answered. It is time Jessica Smith learns that a 69-year-old woman can be much more dangerous than she appears. And so with my heart beating strong but steady, I prepared for the moment I had been waiting for. The moment the hunter would become the prey. Monday dawned clear, as if even the sky knew that something important was going to happen that day. I dressed carefully. A terracotta pantsuit, comfortable closed shoes, the pearl necklace I had recovered. Nothing flashy, but not the defeated old lady Jessica expected to find either. I looked in the mirror. The woman reflected there had dark circles. I had not slept well, but her eyes shone with something that had been absent for 3 years, pure determination. Reddy asked Louise from my bedroom door. She was also impeccable with a pearl gray suit and her leather briefcase under her arm. "Reddy." David was waiting for us in the living room. He insisted on accompanying us. "It is my responsibility too, Mom. I need to be there." I did not argue. Perhaps it was time for my son to face the consequences of his decisions head-on. Robert Davis's office was downtown 3rd floor of a restored historic building. We arrived 20 minutes before the agreed time, 10 in the morning. Robert received us in his office, a wide room with bookshelves full of legal volumes and an antique mahogany desk. Jessica confirmed her attendance, he informed us while pouring coffee. "She is coming with Jerry and probably with some cheap lawyer she found." "How solid is our case?" I asked. Robert smiled with that quiet confidence of someone who knows he holds all the winning cards. "Mrs. Miller, Our case is not solid. It is bulletproof. We have audio-visual evidence, bank documents, witnesses, her criminal record. If this reaches trial, she gets destroyed. And she knows it. Then why did she agree to come? Because she still believes she can negotiate, manipulate, get something. Scammers always think they are smarter than everyone else. At 10 o'clock sharp, the reception bell rang. My heart raced. I took a deep breath. Louise squeezed my hand. The secretary opened the door to the conference room, a room next to the office with a long glass table and black leather chairs, and they entered. Jessica looked different, thinner, dark circles poorly covered with makeup hair, tied in a high ponytail that made her look harder. She wore tight jeans and a champagne silk blouse probably bought with my money. By her side walked Jerry, a man of about 40, messy beard, wrinkled shirt, smile of a used car salesman. And behind them, a short guy in a poorly ironed suit carrying a worn briefcase, the cheap lawyer Robert had predicted. When Jessica saw me, something crossed her face. Surprise, fear, rage. I could not identify it, but she definitely did not expect to see me there. "What is she doing here?" she asked with a shrill voice, pointing at me as if I were a roach. "It is her house we are talking about," answered Robert calmly. "She has every right to be present. I thought this was to negotiate the divorce between David and me." "Oh, it is, but it is also to discuss other matters. Please take a seat." They sat on the other side of the table. Jessica avoided looking at me. Jerry watched me with contempt barely disguised. The cheap lawyer took out a notebook and a pen. We sat on the opposite side. Robert in the center, Louise to his right, me to his left, David next to me. Like a tribunal. Robert opened his briefcase and took out a thick folder. He placed it on the table with a dry thud that resonated in the silence. "Good, let's begin. Mrs. Jessica Smith, you are here because my client, Mrs. Martha Miller, has several serious accusations against you." The cheap lawyer cleared his throat. "With all due respect, counselor, my client is not obligated to—" Your client interrupted Robert with a voice of steel, committed fraud, misappropriation abuse, and conspiracy to commit asset fraud. "If you do not want to hear what I have to say, you are free to leave. But then we will press criminal charges this very afternoon. Do you want to leave silence? Good, let's continue." Robert opened the folder. He took out copies of bank statements and slid them to the other side of the table. "Between January 2023 and October 2025, you and David Miller withdrew $100,000 from a bank account belonging to Mrs. Martha Miller, money that was not yours. That is called theft." "They were household expenses," protested Jessica, recovering some composure. "We maintained everything: electricity, water, gas, food. We had the right." $40,000 on a car?" asked Louise with a sharp voice. "Was that household expenses?" Jessica clenched her jaw. Robert took out another document. "Then we have this fake notary documents attempting to declare Mrs. Miller mentally incompetent, forgery of signatures, fraudulent medical reports." The cheap lawyer turned pale. Would I have to verify?" "We already verified. The doctor who supposedly signed those reports does not even exist. It is an invented name. That is forgery of a public document. A felony." He slid more papers to the other side. Jessica looked at them as if they were poisonous snakes. "We also have this." Robert took out a USB drive and connected it to a laptop. The screen projected onto the white wall behind us. 27 videos documenting verbal and psychological abuse towards my client. "Do you want to see some?" "It is not necessary," murmured the cheap lawyer. "I insist." Robert pressed play. Jessica's voice filled the room. "Who cooks like this? You are good for nothing. At your age, you should be grateful we support you. Video after video, insult after insult, humiliation after humiliation." Jessica's face got redder with every second. Jerry shifted uncomfortably in his chair. The cheap lawyer took notes frantically. When it finished, the silence was deafening. "Elder abuse," said Robert, closing the laptop. "Another crime. And finally—" He took out one last recording, the one from the phone conversation. "No," whispered Jessica. "You cannot—" "Oh, yes, I can." He pressed play. "Do not be impatient, my love. Everything is almost ready." David tensed beside me. Although he had already heard that recording, hearing it again out loud seemed to destroy him again. "David suspects nothing. The idiot thinks I do it for him." Jerry sank into his chair, avoiding everyone's gaze. Obviously, I'm going to leave him, Jerry. Do you think I married that imbecile for love? Please. It was just the means to get the house. When the recording finished, Jessica was trembling with rage. Or fear. Maybe both. That recording is illegal, she spat. You cannot use it in this state, interrupted Louise with a smile. One party can record a conversation without the other's consent if they have reason to protect themselves from a crime. And my cousin had many reasons. Robert closed the folder. Now, Mrs. Jessica, let's do the math. We have asset fraud, document forgery, elder abuse, and conspiracy. If this goes to trial, you are looking at between 5 and 10 years in prison, minimum. The cheap lawyer swallowed hard. Counselor, maybe we can reach an agreement. Oh, absolutely. That is why you are here. My client is willing not to press criminal charges if the following conditions are met. He took out a new document. He read it aloud. 1. Immediate return of the Mazda SUV, which will be sold, and the money returned to Mrs. Miller's account. 2. Signing a voluntary divorce without claiming anything from David Miller or Martha Miller's assets. 3. Restraining order. You cannot approach any of them within 500 yards. 4. Payment of $10,000 for moral damages. And 5. Immediate abandonment of the city. Jessica exploded. That is ridiculous. I am not going to accept. The alternative, said Robert with a calm but lethal voice, is that we present all this to the district attorney today. We will also consider public exposure, social media, local groups, news outlets. A story about how a woman took advantage of a vulnerable elderly lady. We already prepared the press release. Just need to press publish. Jessica went pale. In this digital era, public shame could be worse than jail. She looked at Jerry, seeking support. He avoided her gaze, the coward. Her voice broke. I do not have $10,000. Then get them, I said, speaking for the first time. All eyes turned to me. Sell whatever. Ask your family. I do not care. But either you pay me or you go to jail. We looked at each other across the table. Predator and prey. But now the roles were reversed. You have until Friday, added Robert, to sign all documents and deliver the money. Otherwise, we activate the entire legal process. It is not fair, cried Jessica. I just wanted... What I asked with a hard voice. Rob me. Take my house. Destroy my family. Humiliate me every day. Which of those things did you just want to do? She did not answer. She just cried with her hands covering her face. But they were tears of rage, not regret. The meeting is over, declared Robert. You have until Friday at 5 p.m. After that, there is no turning back. They got up. Jessica almost ran toward the door, followed by Jerry and the useless lawyer. But before leaving, she turned to me one last time. I won't forget this, she hissed with poison in every word. Someday you are going to regret. What? I interrupted her, standing up. Defending myself. Recovering what is mine. No, Jessica. The one who is going to regret something is you. You are going to regret having underestimated a useless old lady. She left, slamming the door. When her steps faded in the hallway, I let myself fall into the chair. My legs were trembling. My heart beat so strong I thought it would burst out of my chest. Louise hugged me. You did it perfectly, cousin. Perfectly. David looked at me with something that could be admiration or shame or both. Mom, No, I said, raising my hand. Not yet. First, let's let this end. Then you and I will talk. Robert put away the documents with a satisfied smile. Let's bet. Do you think she comes on Friday? She will come, said Louise with certainty. Cowards always choose the easiest path, and she was right. On Friday at 3 p.m, 2 hours before the deadline, Jessica appeared at Robert's office, alone, without Jerry, without a lawyer. She brought the signed documents, a certified check for $10,000, and the keys to the Mazda. She said not a word. She just put everything on the desk, signed the last divorce papers and the restraining order, and left. I watched her leave from the office window. She walked hunched over, defeated, with a small suitcase dragging behind her. A taxi picked her up at the corner. And just like that, Jessica Smith disappeared from our lives. "It is over," whispered Louise. "It is over," I repeated. But something did not leave me completely calm. A strange sensation in my stomach, like when you know the storm passed but the air still smells of rain. And I was right to be suspicious, because 3 days later, I would discover that Jessica had not been the only snake in my house. There was another, closer, more painful, and their betrayal would hit me in a way I never imagined. 3 days after Jessica signed the papers, life began to recover an almost normal rhythm. Almost. David kept working at the hardware store. He left early, returned tired, ate dinner in silence, and locked himself in his room. We barely spoke. The wound between us was still bleeding, although no longer gushing. Louise had stayed 2 weeks longer than planned. "Just to make sure everything is in order," she said. But I knew the truth. She was afraid to leave me alone yet, afraid I would fall back into that pit of silence and submission. I was not going to fall. Never again. It was a Wednesday afternoon. Louise had gone to the market to buy ingredients for dinner. David was at work. I was in the living room sewing a button on one of my blouses. Those small domestic tasks that I used to do automatically and that now I performed with a strange sense of recovered peace. The doorbell rang. I put the sewing aside and walked to the door. I looked through the peephole. A man I did not know. Gray suit, navy blue tie, briefcase in hand. Professional appearance. I opened the door cautiously, leaving the security chain on. "Yes, Mrs. Martha Miller." "Who is asking?" "My name is Albert Fuentes. I am a notary public." He took out an ID and showed it to me through the gap in the door. "I come on behalf of attorney Robert Davis. I need you to sign some final documents related to your daughter-in-law's case." Something did not add up. Robert had not mentioned anything about additional documents. "Can you wait a moment? I'm going to call attorney Robert to confirm." The man smiled. "Of course, that is the correct thing to do." I closed the door and dialed Robert's number. He answered on the third ring. "Mrs. Miller, is everything okay? There is a notary at my door. He says he comes on your behalf with documents to sign." Silence on the other end of the line. But not normal silence. The silence of alarm. "What is his name?" "Albert Fuentes." "Mrs. Miller." "I did not send any notary. Do not open that door. Do not sign anything. Do you hear me? Call the police right now." My heart skipped a beat. What? It is a trap. Jessica is trying something. Lock the door, do not go out, and call 911. I am on my way. He hung up. With trembling hands, I turned the additional deadbolt on the door. I ran to the living room window and peered out carefully. The notary was no longer alone. There was a car parked in front of my house, a gray sedan, and inside in the driver's seat was Jerry, and beside him, Jessica. I stepped away from the window, breathing fast. What did they intend break in by force? "Rob something, hurt me." I dialed 911 with shaking fingers. 911, what is your emergency? There are suspicious people outside my house. They tried to trick me pretending to be a notary. I think they want to enter. I gave my address. The operator told me a patrol car was on the way. But then I heard something that froze my blood. A key turning in the lock. I froze. How did they have a key to my house? And then I remembered. Jessica had lived here for 3 years. She had probably made copies. The door opened or tried to open. The additional deadbolt I had engaged stopped the entry. I heard curses from the other side. "Open the door, you demon old woman," screamed Jessica. "That house is mine. You have papers that belong to me." "You violated the restraining order," I yelled back. "The police are on the way. I do not give a damn about the police. You are going to pay for what you did to me." Hard blows on the door. Kicks. They were trying to break it down. I ran to the kitchen. I took my cell phone and started recording. Everything. The screams. The blows. The evidence. Jerry broke down the door, ordered Jessica like a possessed woman. More blows. The wood creaked. The frame splintered. Then I heard sirens. The patrol cars arrived just as the fake notary managed to force the lock. The door flew open, and there stood the 3 of them frozen in the threshold, with 4 officers pointing their guns at them. "Hands up!" Now Jerry raised his hands, immediately cowered to the end. The fake notary tried to run, but an officer stopped him. Jessica stood there with pure hate in her eyes, looking at me. "This does not end here," she hissed. "Stop!" "Ma'am, step back," ordered a female officer heavyset about 40 years old. "You are violating a restraining order. That house is mine. That old woman stole it from me. The house is in the name of Martha Miller. Since 1993, said another officer consulting his handheld computer. "You have no right over this property." They handcuffed all three. Jessica screamed, kicked through insults that would make a sailor blush. Jerry went in silence, head down. The fake notary tried to negotiate. "Officer, this is a misunderstanding. You impersonated a public official. That is a federal crime." I kept recording everything, every second, every word. When they put them in the patrol cars, Jessica looked at me one last time through the window. "I hope you die alone and forgotten, you damn old hag." The patrol cars left with sirens howling. I let myself fall onto the living room sofa, trembling from head to toe. The cell phone almost fell from my hands. 10 minutes later, Robert arrived, disheveled and tie missing, as if he had run out of his office. "Are you okay? Did they hurt you?" I am okay, just scared. This is extremely serious. Violation of a restraining order, breaking and entering identity theft. Jessica is not getting out of this. What is going to happen now? Now she goes to prison, and not for a few months, for years. Louise arrived shortly after, carrying grocery bags and looking distraught. Lisa called me. "What happened?" I told her everything. My cousin hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. "It is over, Martha. This time for real. That woman is never going to bother you again." That night, David arrived from work and found the splintered door and a house full of police taking statements. When I explained what happened, he went pale. "Mom, if something had happened to you, if you hadn't locked the deadbolt." But I did. I already learned to protect myself, son. That is something I should have done 3 years ago. In the following weeks, the legal process moved fast. Jessica Smith was formally charged with asset fraud, document forgery, elder abuse, violation of a restraining order, and breaking and entering. Jerry as an accomplice, the fake notary for identity impersonation. All three were sentenced. Jessica, 7 years in prison. Jerry, 5 years. The fake notary, 3 years. On the day of the sentencing, I was in the courtroom with Louise by my side, with Robert representing me, and with David, my son, who finally was on the right side. When the judge read the sentence, Jessica looked at me from the defendant's bench. Nothing remained of that secure and manipulative woman who had entered my house 3 years ago. There was only a defeated criminal in an orange uniform. I felt no joy, not even complete satisfaction. Just relief. Deep, absolute. We left the courthouse under a clear sky. Louise took my arm. "How do you feel?" As if I could finally breathe. David walked behind us, quiet. I waited for him. We stopped on the sidewalk. "Mom, I will never be able to apologize enough for—" I know I interrupted him. "And you are right. It will never be enough." But David, look at me. He looked up. He had tears in his eyes. "You made terrible mistakes. You failed me when I needed you most. But these last months you have tried to fix it, little by little, and that counts. It does not erase the past, but it counts." What does that mean? It means I am willing to try, to rebuild what broke between us. It won't be fast. It won't be easy. But I am willing if you are too. He crumbled. He hugged me right there on the sidewalk, sobbing like a small child. "I am Mom, I swear. I am going to spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I do not need you to spend your life making it up to me," I said, stroking his hair that was already starting to gray. "I just need you to be a good son from now on. That you respect me, that you value me, that you remember this relationship takes two. I will, I promise you." And for the first time in a long time, I believed him. That night back home, my house recovered clean of snakes. Louise prepared a special dinner, a hearty beef stew, like in the old times. Fresh bread. We sat, the three of us, in the dining room, and for the first time in 3 years, a dinner in that house was not charged with tension or fear. There was laughter, shared memories, future plans. After dinner, I went up to my bedroom. my true bedroom, not the service room, and sat on the bed Henry had built. I took his photo from the drawer. "I did it, my love," I whispered. "I recovered our house, I recovered our dignity, and I am recovering our son." I could almost hear his voice responding. "I always knew you were stronger than you believed, Martha." I put the photo away carefully and turned off the light. Outside, the city slept peacefully. Inside, in this house of walls that had seen so much pain, there was finally peace. But this story was not over yet, because the most important chapter was missing, the one of reconstruction, of forgiveness, of turning ashes into something new and beautiful. And that chapter was just beginning. The house smelled of fresh coffee and warm bread. The windows were open, letting in the fresh breeze of an April morning. In the living room, Henry's photographs smiled again from their frames on the wall. The porcelain china, or what remained of it after my fit of rage, rested in its cabinet, with the broken pieces repaired with the Japanese technique of kintsugi, joining the fragments with gold resin that made the cracks visible but beautiful, like scars that tell stories of survival. I was in the kitchen stirring a pot of vegetable soup, but this time no one would snatch the pot from my hands. This time I cooked because I wanted to. Because it was my kitchen, my house, my recovered life. Mrs. Miller Lisa's voice, my neighbor, came from the front door. "I am here. Where do you want me to put the boxes?" "In the living room, honey. Thank you." Lisa entered, carrying cardboard boxes full of blankets, pillows, and toiletries. Behind her came Louise, who had decided to move in permanently with me with more bags. Because the house was no longer just my refuge. It had become a refuge for others. 3 months ago, while drinking coffee with Louise in the living room, I had a revelation. I looked at the empty rooms. Now that David had moved into his own apartment, working hard to pay me every dollar he owed. And I thought of all the women who were probably going through what I had gone through. Elderly women being stripped by their own families, mistreated, ignored, erased from their own lives. Cousin, I told Louise, "What would you think if we turned this house into something more?" And so Henry's house was born. A temporary shelter for elderly women in situations of family or financial abuse. A place where they could stay while resolving their legal problems, recovering their strength, rebuilding their lives. It was not a nursing home. It was not charity. It was a home. Louise used her contacts to get free legal support for the women who arrived. Robert Davis offered his services pro bono 2 days a week. Lisa, who had become like a granddaughter to me, helped with social media and outreach. And I cooked. I listened. I shared my story. I showed them it was possible to get up after the hardest fall. In 6 months, we had helped 14 women. 14 stories of pain that turned into stories of resilience. That morning we were expecting number 15. Her name was Stella, 72 years old. Her son and daughter-in-law had left her on the street after selling her house, which was actually Stella's, and keeping the money. Robert was handling her case. The doorbell rang at 10 o'clock sharp. I opened the door. There she was, a hunched woman with a sweater, too big, a small suitcase full of patches and eyes that had cried so much they seemed dry. "Mrs. Stella." She nodded without speaking. "Come in, please. This is your house now." Her eyes filled with tears. "Really? Really?" I led her inside. I showed her her room clean with windows facing the rose garden I had replanted with fresh sheets and a knitted blanket. Nothing luxurious but dignified. Cozy. "This is, for me, for you, as long as you need." She sat on the bed and finally cried. She cried like I had cried so many times. She cried with that deep sob of someone who has carried pain for too long. I sat next to her and took her wrinkled hand so similar to mine. "I went through this too," I told her softly. "I also thought there was no way out, that I was too old, too weak, too useless. But I wasn't, and neither are you. It is just that my son... I know it hurts more when it is your own blood, but Stella, listen to me. Well, you are worth more than what they made you believe. And you are not alone. Not anymore." That afternoon, we organized a meeting in the living room. The 5 women currently living in Henry's house sat in a circle. Stella, still shy, joined. One by one, they shared their stories. Sarah, 66 years old, stripped of her sewing shop by her daughter. Betty, 70 years old, mistreated by her son-in-law, who blamed her for all the marriage problems. Celia, 63, whose addict son stole her pension month after month. Different stories, but the same pain, the same betrayal, the same feeling of being invisible. "And what did you do?" asked Stella with a trembling voice. "We defended ourselves," answered Sarah with pride. "With attorney Robert's help, I recovered my shop, and now my daughter does not even dare to come close. I got a restraining order against my son-in-law," added Betty. "My daughter had to choose. She chose her husband. It hurts, I won't lie, but at least now I have peace. And I said," Celia with a tired smile, "put my son in rehab. By force. It was the hardest thing I did in my life. But if I hadn't done it, I would be dead. Or he would be." Stella looked at them with something that started to look like hope. "Do you really think I can too?" "We do not think so," I said firmly. "We know so, because we lived it, and because we are here to help you." The months that followed were of healing, not only for the women passing through Henry's house, but for me too. Every story I heard, every legal victory we celebrated, every time I saw a woman recover her dignity, it was like healing a part of my own wound. David came to visit me every Sunday. He brought flowers. Sometimes he helped with repairs in the house. He had learned basic carpentry on YouTube. Little by little, conversation after conversation, the abyss between us became narrower. One afternoon, while repairing a patio door, he stopped and looked at me. "Mom, do you think someday you will be able to forgive me completely?" I thought about it before answering. "I do not know, David. There are things that are not forgotten, but—" I paused, choosing my words carefully. "I am learning that forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It means deciding not to let the past control your present, and your present includes having me in your life." "Yes," I said after a moment. "But on different terms. I am no longer the mother who lets herself be trampled for fear of losing her son. Now I am the mother who respects herself. And if you want to be in my life, you have to respect that. I do. I respect it. And I admire you, Mom. What you did, what you are doing with this house is incredible." I felt something warm in my chest. It was not the blind, unconditional love of before. It was something more mature, more real. "Thank you, son." A year after Jessica was sentenced, Henry's house had become a reference in the city. Articles in the local newspaper, an interview on state radio, donations from the community, more volunteer lawyers. We had helped 37 women, 37 recovered lives, and each one of them reminded me why it had been worth fighting, why it had been worth breaking those porcelain plates in a fit of desperate rage, why it had been worth recording every insult, every humiliation, every moment of pain, because from the deepest pain can be born the greatest strength. One December afternoon just before Christmas, I was in the garden watering the rose bushes when Louise came out with the phone in her hand. "Cousin, you have to hear this." It was a voice message from a young woman, voice broken by crying. "Mrs. Miller, you do not know me. My name is Patricia. I saw your interview. My grandmother is going through something similar to what you went through. Her own children are stripping her of her house. I do not know what to do. I do not have money for lawyers. But when I heard you speak, I thought maybe you could help us, or at least tell us how to start. Please, my grandmother is 74 years old and is losing faith in everything. But your story gave her hope. And me too." I stood there with the hose dripping in my hands and tears running down my cheeks. "Are you going to call her?" asked Louise. "Of course I'm going to call her, and I am going to help her, like someone should have helped me when I needed it most." That Christmas was different from all the previous ones. We decorated Henry's house with colored lights, a tree in the living room, and garlands in every window. The 6 women living with us helped with dinner, sweet and savory treats, fruit punch, roast turkey, apple salad. David came with his new girlfriend, a genuine, hardworking woman who treated me with respect from the first moment. Lisa brought her family. Robert came by with his wife and children. That house that had seen so much pain, so much mistreatment, so much darkness, now overflowed with laughter, hugs, and light. After dinner, when everyone was talking in the living room, I went up to my bedroom. I took out Henry's photograph. I held it against my chest. "Look what we did, my love," I whispered. "This house we built together is now saving lives. I wish you could see it." I could almost feel his smile, his pride, his love that never really left. I went down the stairs. On the landing, I stopped to look at the scene in the living room. Women of all ages laughing together, sharing stories, finding family in unexpected places. And I realized something. I had lost a lot. 3 years of my life, $100,000. The innocence of blindly believing in family, part of the relationship with my son. But I had also won. I had gained strength I did not know I had. Purpose I never imagined. A chosen family. Not of blood, but of spirit. And above all, I had recovered myself. The Martha who existed before, fear and loneliness, convinced me to accept crumbs when I deserved a full banquet. I went down the last step and entered the living room. All eyes turned to me. "A toast," suggested Louise, raising her cup of punch. "Yes," I said, taking mine. "I want to say something." The room went silent. This year I learned something I want to share with all of you. I began looking especially at the women of Henry's house. I learned that it is never, never too late to defend yourself. That age is not weakness, it is experience. That family love does not mean letting yourself be destroyed. And that when you hit rock bottom, when you think you can no longer go on, that is when you discover what you are really made of. Sarah wiped a tear. Betty nodded vigorously. Stella, who had already been with us for 3 months and whose case was progressing well, smiled for the first time since she arrived. "If there is anyone listening to this who is going through something similar," I continued, "I want you to know. You are worthy. Your lives matter. Your dignity is not negotiable, and never ever are you alone. There are always hands willing to help. You just have to dare to ask." "Cheers," shouted Louise. "Cheers," we all responded. The sound of clinking glasses filled the room. And in that moment, looking at all those women who had found strength in their scars, I knew I had found my true purpose. It was not just living. It was living with dignity, with strength, with the certainty that I deserved respect, and helping others discover the same. That night when everyone left and the house was silent again, I sat on the back porch. The stars shone above the city. The air smelled of wet earth and roses. And for the first time in years, perhaps in decades, I felt completely at peace, because I had learned the most important lesson. True wealth is not in what you possess. It is in what you do not allow them to take away. Your dignity, your value, your voice, and those things, once you recover them, nobody, absolutely nobody can snatch them away again. Final reflection. If this story reached your heart, if it touched something inside you, let me know in the comments where you are watching from. Did you go through something similar? Do you know someone who needs to hear this? Because these stories are not just entertainment. They are reminders that we can get up, that we deserve respect, that it is never too late to recover what is ours. And if today someone is making you feel small, invisible, useless, remember Martha. Remember that a 69-year-old woman destroyed an empire of lies with nothing but courage and determination. If she could, you can too. Like this video if it inspired you. Subscribe to the channel for more stories of women who refuse to give up. And share this with someone who needs to remember their own power. Because dignity has no age, and true strength does not scream, it simply stands up, and it does not kneel again. The end.